He said it once. He said it to a boy he would never see again. In a gas station parking lot in Beaumont, Texas. In 1980, on a July afternoon so hot, the air above the asphalt moved like water. He did not say it like a lesson. He did not say it like a motto, stitched on a pillow or printed on a bumper sticker. He said it the way a man says, "Pass the salt." Plainly, without weight, as if the words were ordinary, as if they did not contain a blueprint for a life that had not been lived yet. "Oh, pay it forward," he said. Then he got on his motorcycle and rode west on E10 and disappeared into the heat shimmer. And the boy stood there holding a $20 bill and a bag of groceries and watched the road long after the sound of the engine was gone. The boy's name was Ellis Monroe Thibodeau. He was 8 years old. He was standing in the parking lot of a Texaco station on Highway 69 because his mother, a woman named Darlene, had sent him to buy bread and milk with the last $4 in the kitchen jar. And the bread was $1.29, and the milk was $2.59, and the total with tax was $4.14, and Ellis was 14 cents short. He stood at the register and counted the coins twice and looked at the cashier, a woman with a beehive and a name tag that said Gloria. And Gloria looked at the boy, and the boy looked at the coins, and neither of them spoke because the silence between a child who cannot pay and an adult who cannot help is a silence that has its own weather. Cold, still, heavy as a shut door. The biker was standing behind him in line. He was not young. He was not old. He was somewhere in the permanent middle age that hard living gives a man. The kind of age where the body says 50, but the face says longer. He had a gray beard cut close and hands that were scarred across the knuckles in the specific pattern of a man who had hit things that did not move. He was wearing a leather vest with patches that Ellis did not understand and a bandana that was soaked through with sweat. "Ring is up," he said to Gloria. "And $20. Ring is up," he said to Gloria. "And give him the change." Gloria rang it up. The change was $15.86. She put it in a paper bag with the bread and the milk and handed it to Ellis. The boy looked at the money. He looked at the man. He had been taught not to take things from strangers, but he had also been taught that when someone hands you a bag of groceries and your mother has not eaten since yesterday, you say, "Thank you," and you mean it. "Thank you," Ellis said. The man crouched down. He was enormous up close. His shoulders blocked the fluorescent light behind him, and his face filled Ellis's entire field of vision, and his eyes were blue and flat and serious in the way that eyes get when a man is about to say something he considers important. "You do not owe me," he said. "Now you owe the next person. Somebody is going to need something someday, and you are going to be the one standing behind them in line. When that happens, you pay it forward. You understand?" Ellis nodded. "Say it. Pay it forward." "Good." The man stood up. He walked out. He got on his motorcycle, a Harley-Davidson shovelhead, black with saddlebags that were cracked and sun-faded and held together with the same stubbornness that held together the man who rode it. The engine turned over with a sound like a chest clearing, and he pulled onto Highway 69, and he was gone. His road name was Tithe. Real name Arthur Grady Nance. He was 53 years old that day in 1980. He had been a Hell's Angel since 1961. He had a rule about money. It moves or it rots. He had grown up in Sulphur, Louisiana, the son of a refinery worker who died of chemical exposure at 44, and his mother had raised 5 children on a grocery clerk's salary, and a principle she repeated so often it became the rhythm of the household. You do not keep what someone else needs. Tithe had taken that principle and made it a practice. Not charity, not generosity in the soft sense, but a mechanical, consistent redistribution of whatever he had to whoever needed it next. He did not keep receipts. He did not keep count. he kept moving. He died in 2003 in a hospice in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Lung cancer. He was 76. He weighed 131 pounds at the end, which is what cancer does to a man who once weighed 230. It takes everything except the frame and the eyes. His chapter brothers visited him every day for the last 2 weeks. The last coherent thing he said to a prospect named Denny, who was sitting beside his bed at 3 a.m., was a question. "Did you eat today?" Denny said yes. Tithe closed his eyes and did not open them again. He never knew what happened to the boy at the Texaco. Now here is what happened to the boy at the Texaco. Ellis Monroe Thibodeau grew up in Beaumont, in the kind of poverty that does not announce itself. The kind with a mowed lawn and a clean shirt and a mother who went to work every day and came home every night and kept the lights on through a combination of arithmetic and refusal. Darlene worked at a laundry. She pressed shirts for $3.75 an hour. She had a system for the bills: electric first, rent second, food third, and everything else never. And she did not complain about the system because complaining required energy she had allocated elsewhere. Ellis was her only child. His father had left before Ellis was born, not in the dramatic way, not with a fight or a letter, but in the ordinary way. The way a man leaves when he simply does not come home one Tuesday and does not call, and the absence calcifies into fact. Ellis did not miss him. You cannot miss a shape you never learned. What Ellis had instead was the sentence, "Pay it forward." 3 words from a stranger in a gas station in 1980 that lodged in his brain the way a seed lodges in a crack in concrete. Sideways, improbable, unshakable. He thought about it when he shared his lunch with a kid named Dwayne at school who never had lunch. He thought about it when he was 15 and saw a woman at the H-E-B counting coins the way he had counted coins at the Texaco. And he put a $5 bill on the counter and said, "Ring hers up." He thought about it when he was 19 and working at a pipe fitting yard in Port Arthur, and a new hire showed up on his first day without steel-toed boots, and Ellis drove home on his lunch break and came back with his spare pair and said, "You owe the next person." He thought about it every time. He said it every time. The sentence became a ritual, a prayer, a mechanical instruction that he executed without variance or expiration. He married a woman named Jolene Baptiste in 1994. She was a school teacher from Orange, Texas. She had a laugh that started in her stomach and ended somewhere above her head, and she understood Ellis in the way that certain people understand certain other people. Not by analyzing them, but by recognizing them. The way you recognize a song you have heard before in a different key. She did not think his habit was strange. She thought it was load-bearing. She thought it was the thing that held him up. They had a daughter named Margot in 1996. They bought a house on Magnolia Street in Beaumont, 3 blocks from the Texaco station, which was now a shell. Ellis became a pipe fitter, then a foreman, then a site supervisor at a refinery in Port Arthur. He made decent money. He did not keep it. He paid his bills, he fed his family, and the rest moved. To the kid at the register, to the woman at the laundromat whose dryer ate her quarters, to the man at the gas pump who was $7 short, to the church, to the school, and to anyone who was standing in the place he had stood in 1980 with 14 cents between them and the thing they needed. He kept a small leather notebook. On the first page, in pencil, he had written, "Arthur, Texaco, 1980, $20. Pay it forward." Below that, every act was recorded, not as an accounting, but as a continuation. A ledger of the debt, not to Arthur, but through Arthur, forward, always forward, the way a river does not owe the mountain, but carries what the mountain gave it. Thus, there were 2,316 entries in that notebook by 2024. Before I tell you what happened in 2024, I need to hear from you. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me where you are listening from right now. And if you have not subscribed, this is the moment. Because what happened when the Hells Angels found out about that notebook and about what was happening to Ellis Thibodeau while he was busy paying it forward is the part of this story that nobody in Beaumont will ever forget. In 2023, Jolene was diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. The diagnosis came in September, delivered by a neurologist in Houston named Dr. Kwan, who was gentle and thorough and who used the word progressive 3 times in 4 minutes. And each time the word landed, it took something with it. First the future, then the plan, then the ordinary assumption that tomorrow will look like today. Ellis became Jolene's caregiver. He reduced his hours at the refinery, yet he learned to operate the feeding tube. He learned the transfer from wheelchair to bed. He learned the language of a body that is leaving. The words that get thicker, the hands that stop gripping, the laugh that still starts in the stomach but cannot make it past the chest. He did this without complaint. He did this the way he did everything. Mechanically, consistently, with the quiet endurance of a man who was taught at 8 years old that you do not keep what someone else needs. And what Jolene needed was all of him. Margot was 27. She lived in Houston. She came home every weekend. She helped. But the help was not enough. Because ALS does not negotiate, does not plateau, does not offer the kind of stable suffering that a family can organize around. It escalates. And the escalation costs money. The insurance covered some. The refinery benefits covered some more. The rest, the home modifications, the specialized wheelchair, the overnight aid 3 nights a week so Ellis could sleep. The rest fell into the gap that American healthcare reserves for people who are too sick for normal life and too alive for the system to care. Ellis needed $47,000 for the first year of home care alone. He had $11,000 in savings. He had the house. He had the truck. He had 44 years of paying it forward and not a single dollar paid back, because that was the rule. The money moves forward, never backward, never returning to the hand that sent it. He did not ask for help. He refinanced the house. He sold the truck and bought a 2004 Ford Ranger with 190,000 miles. He picked up weekend shifts. He was 52 years old, and he was working 60 hours a week and caring for a woman who could no longer hold a fork. And he was doing it alone because that is what the men in his family did. They carried. They did not call. They did not sit on a curb and wait for someone to notice. Someone noticed. A man named Latch, real name Darren Wayne Hebert, 48, Sergeant-at-Arms of the Beaumont chapter, noticed because Latch's mother had been a patient of Jolene's when Jolene still taught at Blanchette Elementary. Jolene had tutored Latch's mother through a GED program in 2008, staying after school 3 days a week for 6 months, unpaid, because Latch's mother had said she wanted to read to her grandchildren. And Jolene had said, then we will make that happen. Latch's mother passed her GED in May of 2009. She read to her grandchildren that Christmas, the night before Christmas, sitting in a recliner with 2 kids on her lap, reading every word herself for the first time. And she cried. And Latch was 33 years old and standing in the doorway, and he cried too. And he never forgot the name of the teacher who had made that possible. When Latch heard that Jolene Thibodeau was sick, he went to the house on Magnolia Street. Ellis answered the door. Or what every man who is drowning says when what every man who is drowning says when someone offers a rope, we are managing. Latch did not believe him. He came back 2 days later with a brother named Pike. And Pike was not the kind of man you said no to twice. Not because he was threatening, but because he was patient in the way that large, quiet men are patient. The kind of patience that outlasts refusal. The way water outlasts rock. Pike sat on Ellis's porch and said, "Tell me about Arthur." Ellis looked at him. "How do you know about Arthur?" Margot told us. She called the chapter. She said her father has been paying it forward for 44 years, and he will not let anyone pay it back, and she does not know what to do. Ellis sat down on the porch step. He put his face in his hands. He stayed there for a long time. When he looked up, forward. He called the chapter president. Then we will go forward. He called the chapter president, a man named Crown, real name Vincent Rene Broussard, 56, who had known Tithe, who had ridden with Tithe, who had been in the hospice room the night Tithe asked Denny if he had eaten. Crown had heard the Pay It Forward story from Tithe himself in 1997 on a ride back from Galveston. She had told the way Tithe told everything, plainly, without decoration, as if the story was not remarkable, as if handing a $20 bill to a child in a gas station was simply what you did when you were standing behind someone who was 14 cents short. Crown had never known the boy's name. He had never known the boy grew up 3 blocks from the Texaco. He had never known the boy had kept a notebook. When Pike told him about the notebook, 2,316 entries, 44 years, and every act recorded, Crown was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "How many chapters can we get?" The answer was 11. They came on a Saturday morning in October 2024. They came from Beaumont and Houston and Lake Charles and Lafayette and Baton Rouge and San Antonio and Dallas and places between those cities that do not appear on highway signs, but that produce the kind of men and women who ride 400 miles on a Saturday. Because a man they never met once said 3 words to a boy in a gas station, and the boy became a man who never stopped listening. 92 riders from 11 chapters. They did not ride to the house on Magnolia Street. They rode to the Shell station on Highway 69, the station that had been the Texaco, the station where Ellis had stood at the register with 14 cents between him and a bag of groceries. And they parked in the lot. 92 bikes filling every space, overflowing onto the shoulder. The kickstands pressing into asphalt that had been repaved 4 times since 1980. But that still sat on the same ground where an 8-year-old boy had learned the only lesson that ever mattered to him. Then they rode to Magnolia Street. The sound reached the neighborhood 3 blocks before the bikes did. A low, rolling vibration that traveled through the foundations of the shotgun houses and the bungalows and the cracked sidewalks and the root-buckled driveways. A sound that built and built until it was not sound anymore, but pressure. A physical weight in the air. And every door on Magnolia Street opened, and every face appeared, and every eye followed the column of chrome and leather as it turned onto the block and stopped in front of the house where Ellis Monroe Thibodeau was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee and a face that said he had not been told. He had not been told. Margot Mount had planned it with Pike and Latch and Crown. She had kept it from her father because she knew that if Ellis found out, he would stop it. Because Ellis did not accept help. Because help moved forward. Because the rule was the rule. They parked. They killed their engines. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Magnolia Street had ever heard. Crown walked to the porch. He was carrying a folder. Inside the folder was a cashier's check for $62,000, raised in 6 weeks from 11 chapters through a combination of fundraisers, poker runs, and personal contributions from men and women who had never met Ellis Thibodeau, but who had heard the story and understood that a man who had been paying it forward for 44 years without keeping a cent had finally reached the part of the road where forward and backward meet, where the river bends back toward the mountain, where the debt circles home. Crown set the folder on the porch railing. "This is not payback," he said. "This is forward. Every dollar in here is going forward. To Jolene, or to the care she needs. To the house. To whatever comes next. It is not going backward. It is going through you. The way it has always gone through you. The same direction it has been moving since Arthur put that 20 on the counter in 1980. Ellis looked at the folder. He looked at Crown. He looked at the 92 riders standing on his street in the October sun, men and women he had never met, wearing patches from a club he had never joined, but honoring a man he had met once for 2 minutes in a Texaco station 44 years ago. "You knew Arthur," Ellis said. "I rode with him. He was my brother. And the last thing he ever said was, 'Did you eat today?'" Ellis opened the folder. He looked at the check. He closed the folder. He pressed it against his chest the way a man presses something against his chest when he needs the weight of it to be closer to the thing that is breaking. Crown reached into his vest. Now he pulled out a coin. A brass challenge coin, heavy, old, with the chapter insignia on one side. On the other side, stamped in block letters, were 3 words: "Pay it forward." The coin had been minted in 2003, the year Tithe died. Crown had carried it for 21 years. Every chapter president since 2003 had carried one. There were 11 in existence. Crown placed his on the porch railing beside the folder. "Arthur never knew your name," Crown said. "But he knew you existed. He knew that somewhere just gets bigger." Ellis picked up the "just gets bigger." Ellis picked up the coin. He turned it over. He read the words. He had been saying them for 44 years, hearing them in his own voice, in the voice of the man at the Texaco, in the voice of every person he had ever handed a bag of groceries or a pair of boots or a $5 bill. And now the words were in metal, in his hand. But he minted the year Arthur died by a club that had carried them forward the same way Ellis had. Not as a sentiment, but as a structure, a load-bearing wall in the architecture of how you move through the world. Jolene was inside. She was in the hospital bed in the living room, the one that faced the window. And she could not speak clearly anymore. But she could see, and through the window she saw the bikes and the riders and her husband on the porch holding a coin and a folder. And she made a sound. A syllable. Half a word. Something that Ellis heard through the screen door and understood the way he understood everything about her. Not through the word, but through the frequency of it. The tone, the specific vibration of a woman who was losing her voice, but not her meaning. He went inside. He sat beside her. He put the coin in her hand. She closed her fingers around it. She held it the way she held everything now, carefully. It's with the full intention of a body that knows each grip might be its last. 3 months later, the home care aid was in place. The wheelchair ramp was built, installed by 4 brothers from the Lake Charles chapter on a Saturday, the same way everything was built now, by people who showed up because showing up was the only language that matched the size of what was happening. Margot moved back to Beaumont. She took a teaching position at Blanchette Elementary, the same school where her mother had taught, the same classroom, the same desk. And on her first day, she found a card in the top drawer that Jolene had left there 2 years earlier. A card that said, "They will not remember what you taught them. They will remember that you stayed." Ellis still keeps the notebook. He still writes in it. Entry 2317 was the check. Entry 2318 was the ramp. Entry 2319 was a bag of groceries he left on a neighbor's porch the week after the bikers came. Because the rule does not change, because forward does not stop. Because a man who was taught at 8 years old that the money moves does not stop moving it, just because the money finally moved toward him. The brass coin sits on the nightstand beside Jolene's bed, where she can see it, where the light from the window catches the letters in the afternoon and throws 3 small words across the ceiling like a projection. Like a message written in light, like the last instruction of a man named Arthur, who died in a hospice in Lake Charles, asking a prospect if he had eaten. A woman named Donna Prejean, who lived across the street, who had watched the 92 motorcycles arrive from her kitchen window, who had double-locked her door and pulled her curtains and told her husband that something terrible was about to happen. Stood on her porch 2 days later and watched Ellis carry a bag of figs to the house next door. She had lived across from Ellis for 9 years. She had never once asked what was in the leather notebook he carried. She had never once offered to help with Jolene. She had locked her door when the bikers came because she saw leather and patches and assumed danger. And now she was watching the same man those bikers had traveled hundreds of miles to honor walk across his lawn with a bag of figs. And the distance between what she had assumed and what was true was the distance between a locked door and an open hand. She crossed the street. She knocked on Ellis's door. She said, "I brought a casserole, and I am sorry I did not bring one sooner." Ellis took the casserole. He said, "Come sit with Jolene, as she would like the company." Donna sat with Jolene for an hour. She came back the next day, and the day after that. Some debts are paid with casseroles. Some apologies are made with presents. Some neighbors become family when they finally stop locking the door. So let me ask you this. What are you carrying forward? What 3 words? What $20 bill? What bag of groceries changed the direction of your life so quietly that you did not notice until you looked back and saw the trail? Tell me in the comments. Hit the like button if this one sat heavy. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who has been paying it forward so long they forgot that forward eventually comes back around. Because here is what Ellis Monroe Thibodeau understood at 52 years old, sitting on a porch in Beaumont, Texas, holding a brass coin minted for a man he met once in 1980. You do not pay it forward because it comes back. You pay it forward because it is the only direction that works. But if you do it long enough, if you do it for 44 years, if you write it down 2,316 times, if you make it the load-bearing wall of your entire life, then one day, 92 motorcycles will park on your street and a man will hand you a coin with your own words on it, and you will understand that the river does not owe the mountain. But the river remembers, and the river always comes home.